Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to join me on Bank Holiday Monday. Today is the 27th of May, which brings us to the start of our last week of May wine month 2024. And a fantastic week to go through because it's all about the south of France, starting off with the Rhône Valley. So just kick off there. So let's hopefully you should be able to see my presentation. So these introductory sessions, this is the last one we've done out of 5. So we know the format now, it's pretty consistent. But today is all about the Rhône Valley and the south of France. But when we talk about the south of France, we're going to be talking predominantly around Provence because it's linked to the wines that we sell on the Hotel de Vancourt list. So as per the last 4 introductory sessions, today we're going to take the time, about 20 minutes or so, to just talk through the locations, whereabouts in France we're referring to, what varieties are grown in these wine growing regions, some key facts, some interesting facts that help us understand a little bit more about the wine growing regions when we're talking to our guests about the wines that we stock at Hotel de Van from these regions. And then just a quick look at the wines that we sell and the producers that we're going to hear more from later on in the week from the Rhône Valley and the south of France. So I've broken today down into sort of 2 subsections. Firstly, we're going to look at the Rhône Valley and then look at Provence in a little bit more detail. So this is the last time you'll see this map, which we've shown at the start of each of these introductory sessions. Obviously, we started the month up in Alsace, then we worked our way down to Burgundy, Loire Valley. Last week was all about Bordeaux, and this week is all about the Rhône Valley and the south of France. So the Rhône Valley really starts just south of Lyon, clearly on the edges of the Rhône River, and runs all the way down through into Provence, and then Provence runs down into the Mediterranean here. There is also an area that's of high importance in French viticulture and vinification, grape growing and winemaking, which is that's often referred to as the south of France. Which is this area here that you can see just to the west of Provence, which is the Languedoc region. And that is a wine growing region that has a number of AOCs, a number of legal wine growing appellations that produce wine under their AOC laws and restrictions. But it's also a large producing wine growing region for sort of entry level and table wines, or the IGP wines, and 60% of the IGP wines grown and made in France come from this larger south of France wine growing region, Languedoc-Roussillon. So we're not really going to be talking about this area today in too much detail because we don't list any wines from this area other than our house wine. So the Maison Blanc, the house white, is grown and made in this wine growing region. But other than that, we don't list any wines from this area of France. So today, as I said, we're going to be focusing on the Rhône Valley and into the south of France, into Provence. So to start off with the Rhône Valley, so this is just a picture of the sort of central northern Rhône. This is actually a famous little hut called La Chapelle, which is on the Port Jaboulet estate, not far from the town of Trans-Hermitage or Hermitage. And so the Rhône Valley itself consists primarily of these 2 areas of the Rhône Valley, so the northern Rhône and the southern Rhône. And as you can see on this first map, the northern Rhône is a thin wine-growing region that literally spans down predominantly the west side of the northern part of the Rhône River, starting in Venay and working down to Valouse. And then we do have this central part of the Rhône Valley called Dye, which we're not going to be talking about today. And then the southern Rhône, which is a much larger wine growing region, including a number of key well-known AOCs in the southern region of the Rhône Valley. So if we just break that up into a little bit more detail, So as I said, we're going to focus on the Northern Rhône and the Southern Rhône. I'm just going to draw a line through here. So the Northern Rhône at the top and the Southern Rhône in the bottom. And these are the principal AOCs of the Northern Rhône. So starting right in the north, as I said, not far, just south of the city of Lyon, we have Côte-Rôtie. We're going to talk about Côte-Rôtie a little bit later. Condrieu, which we're going to also talk about a little later, which is a very famous white wine producing region within the Northern Rhône. And then as we go into the Southern Rhône, we've got a number of key appellations, key AOCs that we're going to be talking about as well, that are predominantly in this sort of dark green area there. And they're just north of the city of Avion. So Northern Rhône and Southern Rhône. Now, a couple of facts about the wine growing region of the Rhône Valley. So the total area, both northern and southern Andaille combined, is the second largest wine growing region in France. And as we've already said, it's split into these two principal sub-regions, which is the northern and southern Rhône. Combined, there are roughly 30 different AOCs, Appellation Contrôlés, between the two areas of the northern and southern Rhône, and they total an area of approximately 71,000 hectares of vineyards in production, and produce more than 400 million bottles of wine on an annual basis. So it is a huge especially when you look at the areas are combined. It's a huge wine growing region, and the largest area of production there is in the Southern Rhône. There are 17 crus which are named as appellations and do use their names on the labels. So not just under the labeling term of Côte de Rhône, or the slopes of the Rhône, if you translate it into English. And these are some of the small crus that we've just been talking about. Condrieu is one, Hermitage, Côte-Rôtie, and of course Châteauneuf-du-Pape. Châteauneuf-du-Pape is a really important wine growing region in the Southern Rhône. It translates to the Pope's new castle, and it was the first area in France to be registered under an Appellation Contrôlée status. And the wine growing in Châteauneuf-du-Pape as an area alone adds up to the same, if not more, than all the producing areas of the Northern Rhône Valley. So it's not only a very prestigious and important part of French wine culture for Appellation, and being the first place to have an Appellation Contrôlée, but it's also a large producing area, making up a huge percentage of the total wine production coming out of the Rhône Valley. The region, as climatically, benefits from being pretty close to the Mediterranean coast, with long, warm summers and mild winters. In the Southern Rhône, there is a wind that comes up from the Mediterranean, called the minstrel wind, and that's a strong, cool wind that blows through and keeps the grapes dry. So it's quite an important, from a viticultural perspective, it's quite an important wind that really helps reduce the spread of pesticides. So as I said, the Rhône Valley as a whole is a warm climate, and the landscape of the Rhône. One of the main reasons why that Northern Rhône strip of viticultural ground along predominantly the west coast of the Rhône Valley is because that area of France is extremely mountainous, extremely hilly. So there's limited areas where you can plant grapes successfully in that Northern Rhône area, which is why you end up with these smaller strips of grape growing along the banks of the Rhône River. Rhône River. Looking at grape varieties now. So there's a number of grape varieties in both the Northern Rhône and the Southern Rhône. But in the Northern Rhône, there's a lot less grapes that tend to be used and grown. So the principal white varieties of the Northern Rhône is Viognier, Marsanne, and Roussanne. So they're really the only three grape varieties that are grown in the Northern Rhône. And those most iconic white grape Appellation Contrôlés are typically using the grape variety Viognier. So for example, Condrieu, which we're going to touch on a little bit later, is 100% Viognier. Now, if we move to the southern Rhône, still talking about white grape varieties, we have the same three white grape varieties in the southern Rhône, but they are joined by a number of other grape varieties, Claret, Grenache Blanc, and Bourboulin. So these are lesser, especially Claret and Bourboulin, lesser known varieties, but these six white grape varieties make up the southern Rhône. So the first three just grown in the northern Rhône, and then the others you'll find in the southern Rhône. Now, there are a couple of other white grape varieties that you find in the southern Rhône, but they're in very small quantities, and these are the principal white grapes of the southern Rhône. The black grapes, or the grapes that make red wine in the northern Rhône, there's only really one, and that is Syrah. So in the northern Rhône, it's all about Syrah, and most of the red wines that you find coming out of those AOCs from the northern Rhône are either 100% Syrah or have a little bit of Viognier or white wines blended to add a floral note to them. In the southern Rhône, we still have Syrah, but it's also joined by a number of other principal black grapes, Grenache, Mourvèdre, and Cinsault. Now, there are other black grapes that are grown and made in the southern Rhône, but these are the predominant four. And there's quite a famous sort of reference to GSM, which is a blend made in the southern Rhône out of Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvèdre. And you often find GSMs from other areas of the world, the wine growing world, that are blended using predominantly those three varietals. So that's the black grapes of the Rhône Valley and the main principal wine growing grapes of the Rhône Valley. Moving on to Provence quickly before we have a look at the wines that we feature from these regions. So Provence is this area of grape growing and winemaking that is just south of the Rhône Valley all the way up to the Mediterranean. And it is clearly a world-famous wine growing region for producing rosé wines. So it's actually the oldest wine growing region of France, having made wines in Provence for over 2,600 years. And it's the only French wine growing region which focuses predominantly on rosé production. When you break Provence down, it comprises of 9 main AOCs, Appellation Contrôlées, and the largest one and the most notable one is Côte de Provence, which is not only the largest AOC, but it contributes 75% of the Provence wine production. Out of that 75% of production, 89% of that production is rosé. So there is a bit of red, there is a bit of white, but the majority of the wine production in these key AOCs of Provence is rosé. There are 4 geographical sub-regions of Côte de Provence, and on the label you find that quite easy because it'll have the name of that sub-region included within the labeling term of Côte de Provence. Just a point to note that throughout Provence, there's a real big focus on shrubs and herbs, and lavender grows quite extensively. And there's a belief that that is a key influence in the styles of wine that you find coming out of this region. Again, very similar to the Rhône Valley, but even more so here because we're getting closer towards the Mediterranean. It's a fantastic climate, quite dry, warm, and it gets this same wind that you see starting off from the Mediterranean through the Provence up into the southern Rhône, the Minstrel, which helps to keep the vineyards dry and hence free of pests. Now, the grape varieties that you find in Provence are different to the Rhône Valley. So the principal white wines are Rôle and Claret. So Claret's the same as what we had up in the southern Rhône, but Rôle is a grape variety. It's lesser known. However, it's the same grape variety as Vermentino. So Rôle is the French Vermentino, so very similar in style. It can cope with much warmer climates, and it's quite robust and bright in acidity. In terms of the red varieties, obviously, as we know, Provence is famous for its rosés. Rosés are made from red grapes with allowing a small amount of skin contact post crushing. And the principal red grapes that are used in Provence are Mourvèdre, Grenache, Cinsault, Carignan, Syrah, and Tiborne. Now, these are just the main six. There are other black grapes, including Cabernet Sauvignon, that are allowed to be used and grown in this area of the world. But these are the principal red grapes of Provence. And I would say that the majority of Provence rosés tend to be Grenache, Cinsault, Mourvèdre based. The wine that we list on Hotel de Van core list also includes a small amount of Shiraz in the blend. You'll find out more about that on Thursday when we look at Provence. So wanted to pick up now, as we had done with all of these introductory sessions, a bit of a sort of guide around our Hotel de Van core list and which wines we feature on the Hotel de Van core list from this larger region of France. So the first one is, I'm just going to bring up a quick black and white image of this area now. So as we know, we've got Lyon here, and just south of Lyon is where the Northern Rhône starts. Northern Rhône coming down to here. Southern Rhône is this lighter grey area here, and then Provence is this darker grey area here. So firstly, the Viognier, the Les Blanches Viognier, produced by Cellar de Chartres. Now, they are based just outside Avion, just sort of north west of Avion here, and they make our by the glass Viognier on the core list. And we've got a session with them tomorrow. Now, it is they produce wine in both IGP Gard, which is the area of grape growing outside of the Southern Rhône, but they also produce wines in the Southern Rhône as well. So they're a producer that have land and make wines from growers that they work with in both the Southern Rhône and IGP Gard, which is part of the Languedoc d'Or region of France. So our by the glass Viognier, which we're going to be talking about more tomorrow, is first, and secondly, our Provence. So our Provence Chateau Gerard is produced in the middle of that Côte de Provence area here, just about halfway from Toulon up to the second town up, which is about here. So we're going to hear about Provence on Thursday, and we've got a session on Thursday to learn all about this wine and the grape growing and philosophy of winemaking in this area. It's a 100% organic wine producer and makes some beautiful wines in this Côte de Provence area of the world. Moving on. So the next wine that we feature on the core list is our Condrieu. Now, Condrieu is based here, and as we talked about earlier, this is a wine growing region which is 100% white wines and 100% made from the grape variety Viognier. Now, we don't have a session from our Condrieu producer, but I just want to mention a couple of things about it. So this is an oak-aged white wine, 100% Viognier, as we've already said, and this particular wine, Le Petit Côte, or the Small Slope, is made spends about 9 months in oak, French oak, a combination of French oak barrels and larger stays before the wine is blended. And it's a wine that's really designed to be aged and will age well, but it's a sort of very, very round, rich, opulent white wine that goes fantastically with a range of foods that you wouldn't necessarily serve white wines with. So meatier foods and sort of more creamier based dishes. So, as I said, we don't have a session with our Condrieu this week, but I thought I'd just mention a little bit about it. Then moving down into Tuesday's session. So Tuesday's session is with Châteauneuf-du-Pape. Now, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, as we talked about earlier, is the largest wine growing region of the Southern Rhône. Sorry, the largest wine growing AOC of the Southern Rhône, and it's based about 20 minutes outside of Avion. So it's around this area of the Southern Rhône here. Okay, now Chansegal is the producer that make our Châteauneuf-du-Pape, and they are running the session tomorrow, so we will learn all about Châteauneuf-du-Pape tomorrow for those who are able to join us. And then for the last wine that we feature on the Hotel de Vin core list, we're right back to the very tip of the Northern Rhône. So this is the furthest north AOC of the Northern Rhône, Côte-Rôtie. Now, Côte-Rôtie produce a range of fantastic wines, again, all from the Syrah grape and sometimes with a little bit of Viognier, as in like 5%, into the blend to give a slight floral element to the wine. But they're a red wine growing region, and it's a red wine growing region that make world-class, very premium and pricey wine. So this is an area of the world. It's a small wine growing AOC that produce a relatively small quantity of premium high class wines from the Shiraz grape. So Guegal is the largest, most notable producer of the Côte-Rôtie, of which there are a number, but Guegal is the largest producer in Côte-Rôtie, and we've got a session with them on Friday, so the last session of the month, to talk about Côte-Rôtie with Guegal. So hopefully that's useful, because it just takes us through the Southern Rhône and Provence and shows where these wines that we list on the Hotel de Vin core list are grown and made. So as I just touched on there, so today's session is all about an introduction to the Rhône Valley in the South France. Tomorrow we go to Châteauneuf-du-Pape in the Southern Rhône with Chansegal. On Wednesday we have a session with Cellier de Chartres, who make our by the glass Viognier. On Thursday we're talking about all things Provence with our Provence by the glass producer based in Côte de Provence. And then last but not least, on Friday the 31st of May, we cover Côte-Rôtie with our Northern Rhône producer of Guegal. And I hope that session is useful. I'm just going to stop the screen there and see if we have any questions.